Hi, I'm John Fredrickson, and welcome back to the ISTDP Institute. In our first video, we showed you how to address a few of the problems that can prevent you from establishing the first step in a therapeutic alliance, declaring a problem. In our second video, we showed you how to address obstacles that can prevent the patient from offering a specific example of his problem to explore. In those two steps, we pointed out how his defenses, and then we encouraged him to declare his problem, and then a specific example. As a result of all that defense work, the patient finally said, "Well, just last night I told her that I want to start looking for another job, and she threw a glass of water in my face, so I yelled at her." Now we have a specific example, so we can go to stage 3, exploring that example to get a shared understanding of what causes his problems. Once the patient declares a specific example, we ask him, what's the feeling toward her for doing that? Now, just because you ask him doesn't mean he'll immediately tell you what he feels. In fact, he can do one of 3 things. He may tell you his feeling, he may become anxious, or he may use a defense. When you ask for his feeling, the patient may keep responding with defenses. So if he does, just help him with his defenses. This work is really important. Why? The defenses he uses to ward off feelings cause his presenting problems. And remember, the patient doesn't use defenses on purpose. He doesn't even see them. So our first job is to help him see the defenses that have been creating his presenting problems. Otherwise, he won't see them or turn against them. So let's take a look at some defenses which can prevent the formation of a therapeutic alliance. For instance, you say, "What's the feeling toward your wife for throwing that glass of water in your face?" And the patient replies, "I wish she hadn't done that." So let's think for a moment. Is that a feeling? Is he really anxious? Or is this response a defense? "I wish she hadn't done that." Exactly. It's a defense. And why? Well, first of all, it's a fantasy, not a feeling. He relates to the wife he wishes he had rather than the one who threw water in his face. We call that defense denial through fantasy, because he relates to a fantasy wife rather than face the feelings towards the wife he has. If you explore his wish for that fantasy wife, you'll just help him engage in denial and avoid his feelings. So block that defense and return to your focus. Invite the patient to say what he feels. He said, "I wish she hadn't done that." You could respond, "But she did throw the glass of water in your face. So what is the feeling toward her for doing that?" Remember, if we don't know what he feels, we can't find out what's triggering the defenses that cause his presenting problems. Then we won't be able to help overcome those problems. Sometimes a patient will use a different defense to avoid declaring what he feels. You ask what he feels, then the patient responds by saying, "I wonder about whether we should have got married in the first place, since we come from such different backgrounds." And then there's the issue of religious differences. I'm not saying I don't respect her religion, it's just that it was probably a huge barrier. Is that a feeling, anxiety, or defense? Right, it's a defense. He doesn't say what he feels. Instead, he wonders, thinks, and speculates. Always block the rumination and return to your focus, the feeling toward his wife. You might say, "You've done a beautiful job describing your thoughts." But the question I asked is, what you feel. If we don't go off to your thoughts, what is the feeling toward your wife for throwing the water in your face? Remember, we want to find out what he feels. We don't want to help him cover his feelings with thoughts. Now, sometimes a patient will use another defense to avoid saying what he feels. You ask for his feeling, and the patient responds, "I don't know what I felt. I got a phone call just afterwards from my secretary, and I reamed her out over a stupid little mistake she made. I was maybe a little too harsh, but darn it, I don't want her to make any mistakes." Now, is that the feeling toward his wife, anxiety, or defense? Good. It's a defense of displacement. He displaces his anger toward his wife onto his poor secretary. Here, you can identify his defense and encourage him to declare the feeling toward his wife instead. "Wow, your wife threw the water, but your secretary took the heat. If you don't turn all this feeling onto your secretary, what's the feeling toward your wife?" Let's suppose the patient responds, maybe this job idea is not good. I should probably just forget about it. Is that the feeling toward his wife? Anxiety or defense? Good. It's a defense. Rather than describe the feeling toward her, he dismisses and ignores his desire. Again, we identify the defense and encourage the patient to describe his feeling. Do you notice how you dismiss and abandon your desire here? Is this a solution, or could this be creating your problems? If you don't dismiss your desires, what is the feeling toward her for throwing this glass of water in your face? Let's suppose he responds, I feel angry. Now we have his feeling. So we could go to stage 4, asking how he experiences that feeling in his body. As we do so, we learn what defenses he uses and how they create his presenting problems. By discovering the triangle of conflict of feelings, anxiety, and defense, we develop a shared understanding of what causes his difficulties. So let's review what we did. Stage 1, we asked the patient, what's the problem you'd like me to help you with? Then, we addressed any defenses the patient used until he offered a problem for which he wanted help. Stage 2, we asked the patient, can we take a look at a specific example where that problem comes up? Then, we addressed any defenses the patient used until he offered us a specific example of his problem. Stage 3, we asked, what is the feeling toward her? Then we addressed any defenses the patient used until he could declare his feeling. Notice these first 3 stages. Help the patient declare a problem, declare a specific example of his problem, and finally, declare what he feels. Those are the first 3 stages in developing a therapeutic alliance. At each stage, we help the patient see and turn against defenses that would otherwise prevent us from forming a therapeutic alliance. Now we know what his problem is. We've learned that his feeling is anger. He deals with it by using defenses of denial through fantasy, rumination, and self-dismissal. So now we can begin to see the triangle of conflict, and we will help the patient see how his defenses create his problems. For instance, denial through fantasy keeps him from dealing with his wife realistically. Self-dismissal keeps him from pursuing his desires and from asserting himself within conflicts. If he can see that, we can help him turn against his defenses and face his feelings instead. Once we have consensus on his triangle of conflict, what causes his problems, we can get consensus on the therapeutic task, what we do in therapy and why we do it. In our next 2 videos, my colleague and friend Patricia Coughlin will show you how to develop a consensus on the triangle of conflict and a consensus on the therapeutic task. After all, if the patient doesn't know what to do in therapy or why he should do it, we really won't have a therapeutic alliance. If you want to learn more, join our webinar series and courses or visit our clinical corner for case consultations with experts. Buy our books and DVDs. We'll email you anytime we post new videos or blogs. Our training materials are designed to help you become more skilled, not just more knowledgeable. We want to do everything we can to help you help others more effectively. In the meantime, I'm John Frederickson from the ISTDP Institute. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to meeting you soon.